Good evening. I'd like to call the City Council study session for January 14th to order. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. All council members are present except for Councilmember Agnew, and Andy Rayum will be joining us in about 10 minutes or so. So he's on his way and called and stuck in traffic. So the next item on the agenda is our meeting agenda approval. I don't know if everybody's got an opportunity to look over the agenda. I know there's two extra things that we'll be discussing tonight. Actually, I think maybe only one, and that would be at the end of the agenda we'll discuss the retreat special meeting. Was there one more thing?
There was one more item, but it's part of the council committee appointment process.
Okay, great. And we will have an executive session at the end of our meeting tonight, which lasts probably 30 minutes. Will be property acquisition and pending litigation. Anybody else anything to add tonight? Seeing none. Any council committee reports? Seeing it's the new year and it's been a while, maybe nothing to report. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah. Councilmember Evans and I, we met last week to go over 3 recommendations from an ad hoc committee at the RFA Planning Committee. We've narrowed it down, and there was a recommendation to, ESCI, where they're kind of a local group to do the consulting work on behalf of the RFA. So that will be coming up here next meeting or so for approval at the or we'll be looking for approval from each of the different organizations for they're okay to move forward with them, and if there needs to be an adjustment on our funding, then that would come at that time also.
Okay. Yeah, Councilmember Evans?
I might just add to that. The City of Bothell will be the agency that the contract will be managing the contract. And I think we're within budget. I think the estimated cost for the study was about $60,000, 61 or something, and we're sharing that cost between the 4 participating agencies. But a question came up: how will do we need an interlocal agreement between the 4 agencies for them to give us the money and for us to manage the contract? Or how do we handle that?
There could be a simpler approach by simply asking them we can invoice them for their participating share. And we'll simply hold those funds and then disperse them as the consultant submits invoices to the city on behalf of the work of the RFA. So although I think an RFA you could structure one, but I think there's a simpler process that we could use in a much easier fashion.
Somebody mentioned that the fire districts may not, for example, for the city to do that, wouldn't we have to have an agreement with someone? We wouldn't. And they thought that the fire district level in other words, they're going to approve the expenditure through their boards, authorizing transfer of that money to the city, and there's no agreement that would be required to sign then for anyone. Okay.
Again, we'll work with the districts to whatever they need in order to allow us to expend their funds.
Yeah, okay.
We'll work with them on.
Great, thank you.
Good deal. Any other reports? No? Jumping into the study session, then first item on the agenda is AB 1408, which is the study session regarding 2014 council committee appointments. And we have a presentation, or I guess our contact person would be City Manager Robert Stowe.
Yeah, just a few opening comments, not so much a presentation, but as you know, the purpose of this discussion here this evening is to determine the interest that individual council members might have to serve on a number of our internal and external committees, and then for council to start to form its decision around who will represent the council on those committees. Formal action on the committee appointments is scheduled for next week on January 21st. The agenda packet also includes those committee assignments during 2013 along with the 2014 committee assignment sheet for you to fill in based, again, on discussion this evening. The city clerk had alerted council yesterday in regards to an additional committee assignment, and that is from Community Transit has requested an elected official from Bothell to be appointed to attend their meeting this Thursday. I believe it's at 5 p.m. In Everett for the purposes of selecting the new board of directors for Community Transit. There are, I believe, 3 board representatives that will be selected from 5 cities of the population size that Bothell is within. So the person that you select this evening to attend that meeting, if there is such a person, may also be the person that is appointed to on the board of directors for Community Transit. And this is all in advance, of course, the formal appointments that you'll be making on the 21st. So, Mayor, with that, I'll turn it back over to you to sort of facilitate the discussion about who might be interested in filling those spots.
Great. Well, so we'll jump on the 2013 County Council assignments. I assume everybody has a copy in front of them to see where you served last year, and for Councilmember Sandberg, new opportunities to serve. So we see that Councilmember Ewing, of course, was serving on several, a lot focused on transportation. He was on East Side Transportation Partnership, Seashore, and UW Bothell Traffic Advisory Committee. So also saw that he was on the North Shore Performing Arts Center Advisory Board, which I don't believe met last year, and the Snohomish County Conservation Futures, he was an alternate. So we need to make sure that we put our focus on getting those filled as well. So as we've gone through this before, this is the new 2014, we'll just go through each and maybe express interest in each line item and see if the current people serving on each one of those committees are willing to continue to serve. So the first on the list that I have is the Capital Facilities Plan Committee, and the prior folks that were assigned to that were Freed, Lamb, and Spivey. So I know I would. Oh no, I'm jumping down. Economic Development Committee, Capital Facilities. I don't believe we.
Is it scheduled to meet?
We didn't have one. Maybe that's why we didn't have.
Yeah, we didn't have it in 2013. They are scheduled to meet this year.
So we will meet this year. So maybe who has interest in serving on the Capital Facilities Committee this year?
I'd be willing to serve.
So we have Lamb, Evans, and Sandberg. And I've been on that committee every year that it's met in the last 8 years, so I'm okay stepping off of that, if you're all right. Are you interested in serving on there, or are you taking a pass?
I'm good. I'm comfortable with the 3 that have shown interest.
Councilmember Rayum indicate what he was interested in?
I didn't see any indication at this point, so maybe once he arrives in 3 minutes, he can chip in his opinions. At this point, it looks like he may volunteer as an alternate, but let's just jump down, and when he gets here, we can have his opinion contribute to it. Yeah.
Just one quick question. There's a couple committees, I think, that they said will not be meeting next year. That's the Business Development Center at UW Advisory Board. So I think that's on here. So I'm wondering if we even...
Isn't?
I don't have it on my new 2014 council.
Maybe they did take it off.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then the other one was the Snohomish County Conservation Futures. I think that money has been committed for long range, so I don't think there's going to be any meetings on that.
Who would be the staff person associated with that?
Actually, Public Works usually, I think, or somebody, but
Director Lionheart, do you know if the Snohomish County Conservation Futures Committee will be meeting this year?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I don't know if
So
they
maybe
will be.
well, it said in here in the staff report that, if I can find it here. Oh, here it is on page 9 of the packet.
Yep.
Due to recent decisions of the board to bond off of existing future district proceeds, it is unlikely that there will be a new round of grant opportunities in the immediate future. So, anyway,
So unlikely. Maybe we'll just do it as a contingency.
yeah, and that's fine. And then the only other one I wondered, should the RFA committee be listed on here somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which,
I probably shouldn't. We've already made our appointments, but that would make sense to.
But at least we can have it on the list.
is it a committee or?
I think it's already been appointed, so that's why we didn't include it on this list. I mean, we can certainly do it just for illustration purposes, but
Would that be under, that'd be under council committees? So just, right now it is Agnew, Evans, and Spivey, correct? All right, I'm just going to write it on my list. I'm perfectly fine adding that
Okay.
when this comes back. All right, Economic Development Committee. We currently have 3, which would be Freed, Lamb, and Spivey. I have interest in continuing to serve on that,
As do I.
as do you. How about you, Mr. Spivey?
Oh, I do, but I'm also willing to serve as an alternate, and I know Councilmember Evans, his last couple of years, has expressed interest, and I would support that also.
Okay.
I would be interested in that and serving on that, although I know that's one that the council as a whole has been interested in. And I think the decision we made last year was that we'll keep it at 3, but any council member could attend that meeting or that
Notice.
with notice, and so that, you know, with public notice, then we could, anyone who wanted to could attend it. But I thought the decision last year was to keep it at 3 with that option to go forward, so whatever.
Right.
Wouldn't that then apply for really any committee? I mean, like, maybe other council members are interested in the capital facilities plan committee. Okay, so it's not that, we would just extend that to the economic development committee.
Right. And I think it would be nice if there is somebody that wants to attend a committee that they're not on, that it actually does get broadcast to the rest of the council. So they know, because sometimes you may not see the notice.
Mayor. A note on that, it's more than just nice, it's required. If you're going to hold a committee with more than 3 council members, we have to,
You have to do a public notice.
Public
but
notice.
I want to make sure that the council, through our council email, gets noticed as well.
right, so it's necessary, though, for that to be broadcast to everybody, so it's important for that reason.
So, Councilmember Sandberg, do you have interest in on the Economic Development Committee as well?
I can ask to attend as needed.
Okay. And then Rayum and Agnew are silent as of now. We'll wait for some input from in the future. Moving on to the next, since we have 3 and an alternate on the Economic Development Committee, Human Services Committee. Who currently serves on the Human Services Committee?
Well, Mayor, although it doesn't show me listed there, I think there was a change, and I've been on that committee for at least the last year.
So who was on there? It shows that Agnew, Evans, and Rayum were on the Human Services Committee. So who got changed?
I'm with Councilmember Spivey. I know I've been there for most years that I've been on the council. So if someone else is interested in that, I'm willing to back off of that.
No, but Hugh, I mean, historically, we're looking at it. It says Human Services Committee was Agnew, Evans, and Rayum. But you're saying you've been on it.
Yes, well, I've been on it in the past, and I was on it for the last year or
I think you just,
yeah.
Is it meeting this year?
as part of, yes. we'll be meeting
Part of the
this year.
budget process? Okay.
So I guess historically, it's nice to know, but on the list it's showing and not correct. So Spivey, would you like to be on the Human Services Committee?
I would actually like to step down from that
Oh,
committee.
you'd like to step down?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd take that post
Would
if
you?
you. Yeah, or I'd be interested in serving.
Member Lamb has interest in the Human Services Committee.
and I'm willing to step down too if there's other people interested in it.
Well, we need 3 plus an alternate.
Yep.
Councilmember Sandberg, thank you.
I've done it in the past, and
Okay, good. Councilmember Rayum, do you have interest and welcome to the meeting, to Human Services Committee? I know we're.
Yeah, I'm
kinda
on it
throwing-
now too, I believe.
Okay,
So-
so you're on it now. So is anybody interested in serving as an alternate for the Human Services Committee?
I can.
Okay.
I'd be happy to.
So as of now, we have an alternate in Councilmember Evans. The committee members would be, so far until once we ratify it, would be Lamb, Rayum, and Sandberg. So we're going to take a moment, just jump back. Councilmember Rayum, we've had volunteers for the Capital Facilities Plan Committee to be Councilmember Evans, Lamb, and Sandberg. And then for the Economic Development Committee would be a change, would be Evans now instead of Deputy Mayor Spivey, Freed, and Lamb. And the alternate would be Spivey. Okay? Any comment or anything to this point on those three first committees?
I'm fine, thanks.
We're roping you in. All right, so Public Service Committee. Currently, looks like the appointments are Councilmember Agnew, Lamb, and Deputy Mayor Spivey.
Which one?
The Public Service Committee.
Public Safety Committee.
Public Safety Committee. So I assume would seems
I'll
like
stay
Agnew
there.
would want to be on that again. I'm
Yeah.
volunteering him.
I know Councilmember Agnew would be interested in the Public Safety Committee, the Joint Fire Board, and the Left One Board.
Yeah, we'll get to those. So, Councilmember Lamb, are you still interested in being on the Public Safety Committee?
Sure.
And is there any further interest from Councilmember Sandberg, Rayum, or Evans in that committee? No, it doesn't say we do.
So, Agnew, Lamb, and Spivey?
It'd be Agnew, Lamb, and Spivey. Okay? Okay. So, the next is the boards.
Councilmember
So I'm sorry I was late to the meeting. I just before we go too far. So the Capital Facilities Plan Committee, everybody that's on here was because I'm interested in being that committee. So if somebody was
On
not
the capital facilities?
yeah, if somebody wasn't enthusiastic about being on there, I'd be more than happy to fill in.
So we did have an enthusiastic Evans, Lamb, and Sandberg.
Okay. I'd like to express some enthusiasm about being on the Capital Facilities Plan Committee.
Okay, so did I hear Councilmember Sandberg say you're all right coming off that committee? Okay.
But what you didn't, what we also discussed was that any council member can attend these committee meetings. We just need to give adequate notice so that it can be publicly noticed if there's more than a quorum.
But only 3 would have voting rights on that Capital Facilities Committee. So you can come, you can witness, you can converse, but you cannot vote until it comes back to the committee here. Councilmember Rayum.
Before we said that you kind of had to be a wallflower. You couldn't actually even participate in the committee if you attended, if you weren't one of the appointed people in it. So I'm getting nods. I just wanted to make sure that was still the case. So
Okay.
it doesn't have to be.
I don't recall that, but I'll defer to Joe Beck, our city attorney. Is that kind of how it should be conducted?
Well, yeah, anybody can attend. One of the things, it converts it to a public, you're converting it by your action of attending. If you're the 4th council member, you're converting it to a public meeting. And all that involves, that's one thing. The second thing is you're not part of the committee, so you can't enter into the decision-making aspect of it at that point. Of course, you'll have heard everything, and when it comes back to council, that's when you'll have input at that point.
So you can't be part of the decision making, but does that mean you cannot converse on the issue that's on the table?
I think you could, like anybody who attends those meetings, if there's an opportunity for inquiry. But I think participating in the process, if you have 4 council members participating in the process, it's really not a committee meeting. It's just it's a council meeting of 4 members or more. And so you start to lose the advantages of reasons why you formed the committee in the first place, is to do some of the work offline or outside of the normal Tuesday meetings.
Okay. So, Councilmember Sandberg, I'll go back to you because you had originally expressed interest in that, and then I just heard you speak to Councilmember Rayum saying that I'd be all right if you want to be on there. Do you want to leave your interest on there right now and we can revisit it?
No, I'm fine letting Councilmember Rayum
Be the voting member?
be the voting member.
Okay.
I'm interested in the Public Safety Committee, wondering if we may need an alternate, even though it's not listed.
No. It does state under the write-up that council appoints 3 representatives and an alternate to this committee.
So maybe I can be considered the alternate to the Public Safety Committee meeting.
Correct. Okay.
Committee.
Me.
Perfect. Anything else on the first section? All right, moving on to the boards. The Joint City and Fire District Advisory Board is currently Agnew and Spivey. And where there's 2 appointments, and I don't see alternates.
I'd like to remain on
Would you
that.
like to remain on there? And just based upon experience, I have to assume that Councilmember Agnew would also be interested in staying on that.
I would assume so
Is there
also.
anybody else who has interest in the Joint City and Fire District Advisory Board? You do?
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
How does that mesh with the committee that we have for the fire district studies?
The
now?
RFA?
It's totally separate. This is basically it's a coming together of what was Snow 10 and the city, and now includes Woodinville. It's a coming together of the 2 boards representatives of boards of commissioners, and then the city council's members, and basically getting reports from the fire chief, deputy chiefs, and commissioners giving just shared information about what's going on, what might be coming up. It's not it's not a progression towards annexation or RFA, but it's more of an information sharing about what's going on, we're sometimes we find out that the Snow 10 is we've offered up to purchase a couple fire engines, or we're just what's going on with each other's organizations is really what it's about.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right, see no other comments. We'll move on to Left 1 board. Currently, it's Agnew and Spivey as well. Are you interested in continuing to serve on that?
Yeah, I chair that, and I'm willing to continue on.
And we'll volunteer Councilmember Agnew as well. Does anybody else have interest in the Left 1 board? And there are no alternates to this board. King County Jail Assembly Group, which meets apparently once a year. We get 1 representative appointed, is Councilmember Lamb. You interested in continuing to serve on that?
You know, if somebody else would like to serve, I'd be happy to step down from that.
Okay. Anybody interested in serving on the King County Jail Assembly Group?
Can you explain that? I know we have the paragraph that's in the packet.
Well, besides reading the paragraph, maybe I could ask Councilmember Lamb to explain what the board does.
Essentially, it's an advisory board on in an assembly group that deals with the need for, there's a growing need for jails in the King County area, and so it's one that meets with other municipalities and with King County and tries to address that. So it's one where if you have a voice, it's an important committee. It does not meet very frequently, but it's a good one to be represented on.
Does it ever consider placement?
It can make recommendations on
Okay.
it. So, yeah.
I would be interested in that.
Okay,
I think Bothell should have a voice in that.
that's great. So I have interest from Councilmember Sandberg. I see no other hands. On the next page would be the committees for health, tourism, arts, parks, and recreation. The Lodging Tax Advisory Board, the LTAC. I have to look and see. As from memory, I believe Councilmember Evans was serving on that. That's right. Evans and Spivey was the alternative. Do you both have interest in serving?
And Mayor, I have served on that for at least 2 or 3 years, and if someone else is interested in that, I think Councilmember.
I am the alternate, and there just hasn't been an opportunity really for me to go, and I'd be interested in serving on that.
And I'm fine with that if there's someone else on the council who wants to, or I'd be more than happy to give up my appointment there.
Okay. Does anybody else have interest in serving as the appointment? No? Okay, so we have 1 interest for the appointment. How about interest for the alternate person?
I'd be happy to serve as the alternate, since.
Anybody else? Okay, so that's filled. North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Board, the PRSA. We have 2 appointments. I don't see that we do alternates, but so the Snohomish County or North Shore Parks and Recreation Service
Area, yeah.
is
It's Councilmember Evans.
Evans and
myself.
Spivey. And the alternate was Agnew.
Yeah, did show an alternate in there.
So do you have continued interest to be the,
I'm currently served as chair of that committee for the last 2-3 years, and it is an area of interest of mine, but if there's other council members want to be on it, I'd be willing to give that up, or I'd be happy to stay there too.
more of an area of interest? It's like,
Profession, huh?
yeah, profession, a little bit good.
So I'm
No, I
happy
would
to
have
stay
my
there
preference, but-
unless, but I've been on there for probably at least 3 years, so if there's
Yeah.
someone else, that's fine too, but I'm happy to stay.
Yeah.
I'm willing to stay also.
And Councilmember Rayam or Sandberg? Yeah,
I
Rayam?
was just curious too when they typically meet.
Quarterly, typically.
Yeah, we usually meet at about 5:36 at the senior center,
Oh, okay.
and it's usually 2 or 3 meetings a year, maybe more.
I mean, I have interest in it, but if you guys are both happy being on it, that's fine. I'd fill in for you though.
It'd be great to have an alternate.
Yeah,
Be the alternate.
yeah, that would be.
So we had an alternate last year, and it says,
Tom, I think.
It was
Yeah.
Councilmember Evans or Agnew.
Councilmember Sandberg, do you have any interest in this? No? Okay, so Councilmember Rayum has expressed interest in the alternate. So in the absence of Councilmember Agnew here, I have to don't make assumptions, but the two appointments could be Evans and Spivey, and then the alternate would be Rayum. Anybody else on that? Snohomish County Conservation Futures Committee, we get to appoint one person, and I believe that was Rayum, but let me look.
It was Evans.
You're right, Evans.
And this is the one, Councilmember Evans, you said isn't going to meet
Well, just
or isn't anticipated to meet this year.
just going by the write-up here in our packet, it just says the committee, oh, that's the steering committee, sorry. Anyway, it said in the packet that they've committed all the funds and they don't anticipate due to the recent decisions of the board to bond off existing and future proceeds, it is unlikely that there will be a new round of grant opportunities in the immediate future. So I don't anticipate that there'll be a meeting this year.
Could be an easy committee to serve on then.
Yeah,
Does anybody have interest in serving as the appointment?
I'm happy to stay there if no one else is interested in it.
Councilmember Sandberg,
Great. Yeah.
would you like,
You want-
it sounds like he might be willing to relinquish
Take
the appointment. Okay, so Councilmember Sandberg has interest in being the appointment. And it looks like we have the option for an alternate. We certainly did last year. Would you like to be the alternate?
Sure.
Right. Anybody else interested in that committee? All right, regional transportation committees. This is where we have some filling to do because Councilmember Ewing had a passion for transportation. Eastside Transportation Board last year was filled by Ewing and Rayum, and then we had two alternates were Freed and Spivey. So, Councilmember Rayum, do you have interest in continuing to serve on the ETP?
I would love to step down from being on
Love to
ETP.
step down.
Is he asking about leaving ETP?
Okay. He's enthusiastic.
What's the meeting schedule? It says second Friday?
Yeah, from 7:30 in the morning till I think 9:30 or 9.
And it meets in Bellevue, east of the old Wajimaya. I think it's the old Wajimaya.
Yeah.
It's,
It's
at
the-
the old Unigard site.
That's the
Bellevue
correct
School
direction.
District main office, I think,
Oh, did they?
Oh, did they switch
location?
by the bus barn. Yeah,
Okay.
across the street.
Okay.
It shows how often I've been as an alternate.
Yes.
It's difficult for me with my work schedule when I'm on Fridays to attend those at all.
Okay. So, who would be interested in serving on ETP as, okay,
Well,
Councilmember Sandberg?
it's also difficult for me to attend with my work schedule. But I think it's really important that we have somebody who is passionate and dedicated to putting Bothell in the regional, in the forum, at the forefront of the regional forum, because that's how we're going to get transportation dollars. And there are cities that are really successful at doing that, and we need to mirror that. So I would be willing to be a member. I mean, the one of the appointees, but
Great.
it'd be nice to have someone who would, equally share that on those Fridays that I wouldn't be able to get off or switch.
It is. I used to serve on that for at least, I think, 3 years. It was a very interesting committee to go to out of all the committees that served on, and this is not a volunteer by any means. But there were a lot of East Side council members that would go to that, and the conversation was interesting to find out about tolling and what's happening on 405 and such. So, Councilmember Lamb and Evans, any interest?
I also have served on that committee in the past and found it to be, as you said, interesting and a good conversation. I think that we have, I think it's important to have good representation on all these committees, and I've committed to several committees already. If I had a lighter load, I might consider it.
We need two.
Let's come back to that.
Come back to that?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll stay on it.
Oh.
You'll stay on it as an appointment?
Yeah.
Okay. And then who would be two alternates?
I can stay as an alternate.
Okay.
It's going to be hit or miss, but I can stay.
Do we have another interested alternate from Agnew, Evans, Reeder, Lamb? City Manager, didn't you just get an email from Councilmember Agnew of interested in being an alternate on the? Do we ever appoint people in their absence? He's not watching right now. Maybe we'll come back and see how we can fill that last place.
If he is, your phone might be ringing still.
I feel something in my pocket.
Well, don't we have two? Right.
We have two appointments, which is Rayum and Sandberg, and one alternate with this Spivey. So we have the opportunity for two alternates. It's not
Okay.
necessary. At least we do have our appointments filled.
Okay.
Let's see. Why were you interested?
No, I just was wondering sure I had my chart right.
To be
All
clear,
right.
he was not.
Seashore Transportation Forum, two appointments plus one alternate. I served on this many years ago, probably my first and second year, so 8 years ago. Is anybody interested in serving? It was Councilmember Agnew and Councilmember Ewing, both who are not present here with us this evening.
As Mayor, as I recall, there was some discussion on this, and I think Councilmember Agnew questioned whether or not we really needed somebody on this. Councilmember Ewing, who served on it, because they weren't meeting very much and there wasn't much going on. So
When I served on it, there wasn't much going on, and I suggested 5 years ago that we don't continue to appoint. But Councilmember Ewing was passionate about it to serve on there. But I don't even know if they met last year. Do you know, Director Lanhart?
This one I do know, Mayor Freed. They do meet infrequently, I believe, but the City of Bothell is no longer a voting member for Seashore, so that may guide your choices as far as alternate or appointments.
Yep.
Why is that?
It-
Why is it we're no longer a voting member?
Because our space is in the ETP. ETP, our East Side Transportation Partnership, and Seashore are sister entities, essentially. So,
Okay, thank you.
That's a nice
we don't have
sister
a
entities.
yes, we don't have a vote in both, just the ETP.
does staff attend that committee?
Staff has attended on occasion when requested to. I believe recently the deputy director did a presentation regarding 522 with the city of Kenmore recently, but I don't know that staff frequently attends anymore.
Back when I served there, we used to have a seat at the table to vote at ETP and Seashore, and there was some contention that Bothell had the opportunity to vote at both because they are sisters, but they can both ask for the same money. So I'm not interested in serving on Seashore as an alternate or an appointment. And I don't know that Bothell needs to have somebody appointed there. That's my perspective and still is. Opinion.
I'm sure if there was information that staff thought was important that was going to be presented at that meeting, that they would probably send somebody, whether we were on there or not. So getting information from there, I'm via staff, I'm comfortable with just taking this off of our boards and committees list. And if we're not voting, all we're doing is we're gathering information, and staff is probably going to be is well equipped and all to know when that pertinent information is coming up to attend the meeting. So I'm comfortable with just eliminating this one altogether.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine.
So, I mean, I saw presentations from WashDOT would come to both, and you'd see the same presentation. So I think we get the information from our involvement with ETP, which is a good involved board. So I don't see any appointments, or do we have any issue with just not appointing anybody?
I don't think so. In the event that there is a discussion topic at Seashore, there's nothing preventing one or more of you to attend their meetings.
Okay. Moving on, UW Bothell CCC Traffic Advisory Committee. It was formerly Councilmember Ewing with the alternative Councilmember Agnew. Does anybody have interest in serving on the UW Bothell Traffic Advisory Committee? Councilmember Rayam, yeah.
Yeah, I would.
You would?
Be interested, yeah.
Anybody else have interested in being in the appointment? How about interested in the alternate position?
Sure. If no one else, I'd be happy to be alternate.
Great. Moving on, community transit, 2-year term, 1 appointment. And this is something new to us. This is the meeting that's...
As I understand it, what you should be appointing this evening is simply someone to attend the meeting on Thursday night,
Okay.
recognizing that that person that you appoint may, in fact, end up serving as one of the board members, if that person were willing, or the person you send may not be elected amongst the group of other cities within our population size.
As I see on what you hand out here, there are 3 members and 2 alternates from component cities with population between 10,000 and 30,000. We're listed in that, which will actually be a city of 40,000 in the very near future. So 2 members, above that, 2 members and their alternates from the component cities with a population of 30,000 or more, Edmonds, Linwood, and Marysville.
Yeah, we'd still
We're actually already over.
Yeah, well, we'd still fall within the 10 to 30 given our population within Snohomish County.
Within Snohomish County. Thank you. So is anybody interested in attending the meeting? It meets at the Community Transit Boardroom in Everett this Thursday night at 5 p.m. No?
Councilmember Evans and I will be in an RFA meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leaves Councilmember Rayum and Councilmember Lamb. And
And then I assume the rest of their meetings are on Thursday nights?
Does it say in here? I think it said that. Oh, it doesn't say that in here.
at this point, I'm not able to attend on Thursday night. Councilmember Rayum.
I have a Y8 meeting Thursday night.
Councilmember Lamb, do you have interest?
I will check my calendar.
Okay, check the calendar.
I mean, I don't know too much about this committee, but I think it's another one of those regional committees where if Bothell can have a presence, then maybe, we can position ourselves better for funding opportunities or whatever. It's just that my work prohibits me from.
More routes.
Has anybody here
I
attended that?
I have attended the organizational meeting before, and Bothell has very, very limited service with community transit. It has some, but not much. And in more recent years, community transit has has had a number of budget difficulties, and so it's largely been kind of cutting routes and paring back on service. The organizational meeting, which this is an appointment to, is essentially caucusing to try to get appointments. I think there may actually be an opening because I think Mayor Marine was on community transit, or at least he was in recent years, and then he's no longer the mayor in Mukilteo. So there might be an opening, but there's always a lot of people jockeying for those, and there's a number of other jurisdictions, perhaps because they serve on community transit, who are better served by CT than we are.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, it doesn't look like anybody's able to attend on Thursday night. Well, that brings us to the end of our committee appointments. I believe this comes back for ratification next Tuesday night.
I think.
Do we
I think
have
there's one more page? Yeah. It's not on the hard copy, but it's in the packet.
And since I only have a paper copy that for me this evening, there's a whole other page. Oh my gosh. Business Development Center, the BDC at the University of Washington, Bothell, we have one appointment. Wasn't this one that was going away because they didn't meet? I know I was on it last year and we didn't meet.
It's the one that we'd recommended that we simply put in suspension for the moment. And not
I
make any
have
appointments.
this from 2013. I don't have the page for this 2014. Is anybody interested? Oh, that was one you recommended getting rid of?
Not make an appointment, so
Not make an
essentially wait until they revisit the purpose of that organization.
Okay. Well, then we won't, at this time, appoint anybody. If it comes up again, then we'll take that opportunity. So I only have the 2013 copy. On the 2014 copy, is there a Association of Snohomish County Cities and Towns?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have one informal appointment. That was Councilmember Lamb. Are you interested in continuing to serve on that?
Sure.
Does anybody have interest in that appointment besides Councilmember Lamb? Don't see there's an alternate to it. The next would be Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering Committee. We had Councilmember Ewing last year, and the alternate was Evans. Anybody interested in serving on the Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering Committee?
I'd be willing to serve as an alternate to Councilmember Evans. I know he had been an alternate for many years and had expressed a desire to serve as the representative.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate that, Councilman. I was just going to say, if someone else is interested in that, I'd be more than happy to actually.
Okay.
That would be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'd have meetings. Do we have anything on Friday, too, or Monday?
I think it's important.
My plate's getting full, so if there's anyone else that wants to be involved in it.
I think it's important that maybe a Snohomish County resident or member probably.
Well, I
Is that just a way to?
I think,
I mean,
anybody on the council can represent.
I don't disagree. I just think it carries a little more weight. You kind of show that you have a dog in the fight that way.
Well, we have half our city in the dog fight.
Yeah.
So are you interested in serving on that committee?
I would serve as the alternate if you.
Are we talking
The
steering?
Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering Committee.
Does it meet second Wednesday?
And I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, look at their.
fourth Wednesday.
So it says, this is Snohomish County Elected Officials Committee with some public advisory members that guides the planning efforts of Snohomish County and cities within the county in implementing the Growth Management Act. This committee also plays a pivotal role in making recommendations together with the Puget Sound Regional Council regarding transportation priorities related to grant funding. The committee meets at the fourth Wednesday evening of each month in Everett. So that's an important thing to consider. Council appoints one representative and an alternate to the committee. Staff support is provided.
I was going to say I'd be happy if there's meetings where you couldn't make it. I'd be happy to go to that if you'd. You don't have to. You don't have to.
So is there anybody here who would like and have interest in Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering?
Would Councilmember Agnew like that one, I wonder?
Maybe we could do that too. So Councilmember Sandberg.
I'd have an interest. I mean,
You would?
Yeah.
Okay.
If
you don't want to.
I think it's great because with a transportation component to it in the PSRC, it would be an interesting conversation.
Can you make those meetings then?
Fourth Wednesdays I can.
You can?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm writing Sandberg in as the, unless Councilmember Rame as well. Do you have interest in her? Okay. So the interested person for the appointment would be Councilmember Sandberg. And Councilmember Lamb, are you still interested in serving as the alternate?
Sure.
Okay. So cross that out, right? Alternate down. Anybody else? Comments on that committee? Moving on to Suburban Cities Association. Again, I don't have the 2014, so correct me, please, if this committee is no longer on the new list. But we have the alternate was Councilmember Agnew, and the appointment was Rayum. Do you have interest in continuing to serve on the Suburban Cities Association?
I did. They did change their name to Sound Cities Association.
Sound.
But yeah, I would be interested in continuing.
Okay. Anybody else? How about for the alternate? Interest in the alternate position, or should we leave Agnew? Sure leave Agnew, or sure you have interest?
I would say leave Agnew.
Okay. Any other further comments on that? Next is WIRA 8 Forum. Last year was Councilmember Rayu. Anybody, do you have continued interest in serving on that committee?
I do. I was actually appointed vice chair to that committee,
Wow.
so I'd like to stay there for the year.
Right.
Oh.
Unless you want to get.
Anybody further interest? I don't know that there's an alternate. There wasn't last year. Council appoints one representative and one alternate. So add that to the list here. Who would be interested in being an alternate on the WIRA 8?
I can be.
Okay. So that's Councilmember Sandberg be interested in being the alternate. Any further interest? The next would be, mayor's meetings. So now I have.
This one's easy.
Looks like you have those
Boy.
locked up.
Okay. Well, that comes to the end of my list again, of no further appointments in committee. Is there any further, we wanted to go revisit, I believe, didn't we, one of the first, which was the capital facilities, or we settled that?
Yeah.
Settled that. You were willing to be Councilmember Evans, Lamb, and Rayum. So I'm just going to go through it quickly one more time, so make sure everybody has these marked down. It's on the Capital Facilities Plan Committee. We have the appointments would be, once we ratify next week, would be Evans, Lamb, and Rayum. The Economic Development Committee appointments would be Evans, Lamb, and Freed, with an alternate Spivey. The Human Services Committee, the three appointments would be Lamb, Rayum, and Sandberg, with the alternate as Evans. The Public Safety Committee, with the three appointments, would be Agnew, Lamb, and Spivey, with the alternate Sandberg. We have the RFA Committee, which is Agnew, which we've already voted on, so we don't need to again, but I'm just putting it on the list, which is Agnew, Evans, and Spivey. Then on the ministerial boards, we have Agnew and Spivey as the appointments, and on the left one board, Agnew and Spivey. In the jail would be Councilmember Sandberg. Going further, the Health, Tourism, Arts, Parks, and Recreation Committees, the interest was expressed for the appointment from Spivey and the alternate as Evans. The North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area, the interest was for the appointment is from Evans and Spivey, with the alternate being Rayum. The Council or Snohomish County Conservation Futures, which may or may not meet, which would be Sandberg as the appointment with a potential alternate as Evans. Then the Regional Transportation Committees, the ETP, would be Rayum and Sandberg with an alternate as Spivey. Does anybody have further interest of being the next alternate?
Not right now.
No,
Want to be an alternate
sorry.
too?
It's too late, my friend. Seashore Committee were, at this point, collectively, it seems, nixing our formal involvement in that committee or forum. The UW, Bothell, and Cascadia Community College Traffic Advisory Committee, interest expressed in the appointment for Rayum and the alternate Evans. Nobody was interested in attending the community transit meeting this Thursday. Then jumping to the Lodging Tax Advisory Board, we have interest from Spivey, with the alternate being Evans. The PS...
Yeah.
We already went through
that.
You would have your
Sorry, you're
Snohomish
right.
County Steering,
So we got rid of the
Sound City.
Business Development Center, and then Associated with Snohomish County Cities and Towns was Lamb. For the appointment, Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering Committee, the appointment was Sandberg, with the alternate interest being Lamb. The Sound Cities Association, interest for the appointment from Rayum, with the alternate for Agnew. And then WIRA 8, the vice chair, the WIRA 8, Councilmember Rayum, and alternate being Sandberg. And then I take the balance. Good? So I believe that comes back next Tuesday night for ratification? Okay. Great. The next item on our study session tonight is AB 14 9, a study session regarding utility franchise agreement with McLeod USA Telecommunications Services. And Attorney Joe Beck, I believe, has a presentation for us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a study session regarding utility franchise agreement with McLeod USA Telecommunications Services. McLeod is a fiber franchise that runs currently through the city. The line is as depicted on the map that's up on the screen there. And you can see that's 240th to Bothell Everett Highway to 228th. Runs along right-of-way, and that's basically what a franchise is a master permit for a telecommunications company or other types of utility companies to be in the public right-of-way. In this case, they are not asking to expand their network at this time, but they have had a franchise for previously with the city, and they're seeking, basically this is a renewal, even it lapsed, so we have to do a new one, but it's basically the same as a renewal of a prior franchise. I have also here tonight Dave Phelps from Public Works, who is going to help me if you have any technical questions that I can't answer. Dave and I work together to process these, and along with legal counsel that has some expertise in this area. This is similar, in fact, should be almost identical to the recent franchises that you have looked at in the last year. The last one that came forward was Zio. And in fact, Zio's line runs parallel to this one. So it's in almost exactly the same configuration in the city, except that I believe they have a spur that goes off and services one little spot in town. McLeod is owned by Windstream, but the franchise is with McLeod. And they do not serve anybody in the city. It is simply a trunk line. And if they were to seek to expand their network or to serve anybody with the city, they would have to apply for a permit, a right-of-way permit, and go through that process. So this is just basically maintaining the status quo, and we're recommending that when we bring this back that council approves this franchise.
Great. Thank you, City Attorney. Does anybody have questions for staff? Councilmember Evans.
So this is all fiber, all underground. Says in there no more utility poles. We don't have any utility poles at all with this in the agreement I saw.
Right. My understanding is this is all buried fiber.
Yep. And the $2,500 admin fee, is that a one-time fee or is that an annual fee?
It is. So it's a one-time fee.
So that's been paid.
We're entitled to recover the cost of processing it and any legal review that's involved, and we are recovering that.
And is this subject to utility taxes in any way? Is this considered a utility?
Well, technically it is, except they do not provide any service to the city. So I would be surprised if they're paying any utility tax.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I had, and I guess based on the other council discussion, I'd recommend we put this on consent for the next meeting.
Any further comments or questions? Councilmember Sandberg.
You said that if they wanted to provide service, either residential or business service, to the city of Bothell, they'd have to get right-of-way permits for that work. But would they have to modify this agreement, or would this agreement just stand?
This agreement stands. It's a master permit document, so to speak. So within its terms, it provides the requirement to come back and seek additional, necessary permits. If you want to cut into the city's road, you have to have a permit to do that. That has to be regulated. You have to pay the permit fee. You have to provide as-built drawings, all the things, and that's all spelled out in the franchise agreement. So really what we're trying to do is establish our relationship, make sure we have a well-ordered relationship so that in the future, as they're doing their business, we know how to go about that.
Further questions? Deputy Mayor Spivey?
No further questions, but I would agree with Councilmember Evans on putting this on consent, yes.
Okay.
I'd agree with that as well.
I see everybody nodding their heads that no further questions. Or do you have a question, Councilmember Rayam?
I just said, are we going to update the map in the agreement?
The map in the agreement's correct. It's just not extremely specific, but it's what's required. It's what's necessary for the ordinance.
Okay.
If you compare it to this map, it actually is almost exactly the same. It just has the line running through the borders of the city.
This is the one on this.
It's Exhibit A to the ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, I mentioned it to the city manager. It's just I couldn't tell what was going on in that map at all. There was no labels or anything. So
It looks like an abstract drawing with no listing of streets or anything like that.
yeah.
Well, it's intended to be a general representation of where the facilities currently exist, and at this point, it would be. It is correct. It matches this just without all the extra detail. It's sufficient for the ordinance, and at this point, it would be a lot of effort to go back and reopen the ordinance. They've already signed the agreement, so it would be a lot of effort. If council felt that was really important, we certainly could do it. I'm just recommending that we don't.
All right, that's fine. I just was curious if we just missed something in the map.
So, sorry to jump in. Are you finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
So, it's really problematic to even list 405 right there?
It's not problematic. It's that we would have to go back. We wouldn't be able to bring it back for approval next week because most likely we'd have to, they've already signed, they've already gone through their approval process. So we'd have to reopen, and I'm assuming that it would not be a problem to do that. It would just put us down the road a ways.
Okay.
And again, we have, we have other records of where they are. As far as for locate issues, everybody uses the one locate service, and so nobody, it's not important from that standpoint. From a safety standpoint, we generally know where it is. In fact, we know exactly where it is because it's in the public right-of-way in 240th, Bothell Everett Highway and 228.
I just think if somebody calls up this agenda bill and looks at this, it really is nothing. So I guess maybe in the future on agreements, it'd be nice to at least have a major like freeway listed I-405 or something just for reference. But it is what it is.
Again, we can certainly go back and do it. Just my recommendation is it's not necessary for this agreement.
Okay. So I saw 5 nodding heads or 4 nodding heads that coming back on consent would be okay. Any further direction for staff? Okay. Moving on, the next item on the agenda would be study session item AB 1410, which is study session to consider a planning commission recommendation regarding proposed code amendments to the general downtown corridor development regulations. And Dave Boyd, our senior planner, is here this evening with the presentation. Good to see you, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I do have a short PowerPoint presentation to share with you. I'm also joined tonight by Planning Commissioner Steve Booth and by Tom Marvin, who is the applicant for this code amendment. These code amendments were initiated by City Council in 2000. As part of the 2012 docket. And as I said, they were applied for by Tom Marvin, who is a property owner. owns the what had been referred to as the University Heights parcel in the past. His most recent pre-application for this property, we're referring to it as Marvin's Gardens. It's in the general downtown corridor district of the downtown sub-area, and so it's not specific to this property, but is an area-wide code amendment that would apply to all of the general downtown corridors. There's the biggest portion aligns along Beardsley Avenue in the northeast portion of the sub-area. There's an area along 520, or not along 522, but adjacent to the 522 corridor zoning, south of Sunrise Valley View neighborhood, south and west, and then an area in the northwest corner of the downtown sub-area around the QFC Rite Aid centers. So recap of the request was to allow the minimum parking requirements of the central downtown districts in the general downtown corridor. And we'll get into that in more detail later. 2, to allow surface parking on the sides of structures. It isn't currently allowed. And 3, to reduce the front setback in the general downtown corridor. The parking provision is to apply the same minimum parking requirements that the downtown core, downtown neighborhood, and downtown transition districts have. Those and that would, in terms of the code or the downtown plan, would essentially replace the table that refers to the general, the citywide parking regulations for general downtown corridor district, and replace that with the same table that's in those other districts, that's used for those other districts. Here I've added the actual parking counts for the various uses that are in the citywide code. But currently, general downtown corridor just defers to the citywide code. The essential difference is that in the downtown plan, our consultant recommended that we apply the transit reductions that are available to developers to the commercial parking requirements, and then change the residential parking requirement from 2.2 per unit to a requirement based on 0.75 spaces per bedroom, so that the parking requirement is related to the number of bedrooms in the development. The discussion on this was informed by my participation in a King County right-size parking study, which analyzed parking utilization and requirements throughout the county. And this graphic here shows that Bothell, up in the upper right corner here, along with Woodinville and some other suburban jurisdictions, have parking requirements that are significantly higher than the actual measured parking utilization. Utilization is about 1.45. Our requirement is 2.2. So we're basically requiring developers to provide more parking than is actually required, thus driving up the cost of housing. The map also shows other jurisdictions have reduced or eliminated minimum parking requirements and left it to the market, and those are shown in the green color here as having a requirement lower than the actual utilization. So, and the King County, the right-size parking study also developed an online calculator, parking calculator, where you could choose a parcel and plug in the number of units you were anticipating, the price of the units, and the mix of units in terms of size. And it would take into account the transit surface in that area and a number of other factors and their study of parking utilization throughout the county, and determine what the projected parking requirement should be. So and there was some testimony that we should wait until we have implemented the new parking restrictions in the central downtown districts before expanding that. But we felt, and the Planning Commission ultimately recommended that it was appropriate to extend that different parking formula to the general downtown corridor, and that it's appropriate for these the requirement to meet the minimum requirement that is expected, and let the market provide more parking for the types of developments that do need that. So this is an analysis on the Mr. Marvin's property with the mix of units that he would like to include in that property. Mostly studios and one bedroom. In fact, all studio and one bedroom units, given its proximity to the campus. And the parking calculator does show that the projected parking count or parking ratio would be 0.75 per unit. The current code would essentially, he could still build his development. He could do it as, instead of 153 studios and one bedrooms, he could do 52 two bedrooms at the 2.2 count. Basically, have the same number of bedrooms, market it to be shared housing for student population, and this is what the formula produces there, that the projected parking rate is 1.45. It's still well below the 2.2 per unit, so he would be building more parking than this calculator at least projects that he would use. One other aspect of this that came up in our discussions is the current. So a developer could actually come in and do large residential suite apartments, or apartments as they're popularly known, with up to, we've seen in other jurisdictions, developments with up to 7 bedrooms with a shared kitchen that are essentially defined as a single unit. They would only be required 2.2 parking spaces under our current code. So switching over to a calculation based on bedroom would avoid the, I think, what would be considered an unintended benefit to shifting to apartment type development. We also looked at some scenarios on other sites. This is the 104 project, which is actually in the downtown neighborhood district. So it has the 0.75 per bedroom requirement. Again, applying this the calculator and using the unit counts and the prices that they were marketing it at the beginning of their leasing, it came up to a parking unit ratio, projected parking unit ratio of 1.04 per unit. The required parking was about 90 spaces. They actually provided about 28 spaces more than that. So this is a demonstration of the market actually creating a higher parking count than the minimum. Developers don't always build to the minimum. And they have since actually entered into an agreement with HealthPoint to lease some of the parking spaces to HealthPoint. So just as an illustration, this is not specifically directed on this site, but this is Mr. Marvin's proposed or a schematic, basically, of what he could do on his site. And let me just explain a little bit what we're looking at here. So this is a site plan with north facing to the left. We've got 185th Street here on the left side, 108th Avenue on the to the bottom of the site plan. 108th does not go through. There's a steep slope there. But that's where he would take access for parking. There'd be 3 bays of parking. 2 would be under building pads. And 2 of them would extend beyond the building pads. This provides the number of spaces that he would need for those scenarios that I showed previously. So you'd have basically a 4-story development with partially submerged parking, and then at the lower end of the site, in a 3-story, 3 stories of apartments above partly submerged parking at the upper end of the site. So this illustrates the parking location question. To get that number of parking spaces, he's extended the parking beyond the building, so it is within that side setback, which is not currently allowed. So his request was to allow that, and the Planning Commission recommendation was that could be done as long as there was adequate screening from the street view. The code setback requirements already require a significant 25-foot landscape buffer adjacent to any adjacent single-family zoning. So the focus was really on buffering that any parking that would be allowed on the side from the street view, and that's the planning recommendation in your packet. This illustration shows what the front setback request would be. Again, Mr. Marvin suggested allowing front setback to be reduced to 0. And the recommendation is actually to allow it as little as 5, but only provisionally with approval from the director. And the thinking was that in adjacent districts, well, first of all, that on this particular site, and there are a few other sites within the GDC that are similar, allowing a reduction in the front setback would move the development even further away from the adjacent single-family parcels to the uphill side. And by moving it away from those and downhill, it would actually reduce the relative height of these the development relative to the adjacent single-family parcels. The other issue is how does that setback fit with the other districts in the downtown plan and the hierarchy of increased setbacks as you move away from the core. The recommendation is to allow those only where reducing the front setback would also reduce the impacts to adjacent single family, and or where those transitions would where it would create better transitions to adjacent zones. So, for example, where you have GDC adjacent to downtown neighborhood with a 0 to 10 foot setback, then a setback on that transition could, of less than 20 feet, could provide a smoother transition. So here are a couple of illustrations showing how that would work in plan view. On Mr. Marvin's site, it would move from the existing setback around here to a reduced setback there, which is still set back from the existing structure to the west, but it is less than the adjacent structure to the east. Or on another site, one of these transitions from the downtown neighborhood zone to the general downtown corridor on the post office block site, it would allow a setback to be reduced to more closely align with the adjacent downtown neighborhood zoning of the Health Point project at the bottom of the slide, or the dashed line here is the outline of the 104 development, and again it would allow a reduced setback that would more closely conform with those the setbacks that were built there. So that was the thinking behind the recommendation here. And again, looking at the entire district, there are a limited number of situations where reducing the front setback would be beneficial according to those criteria and would be allowed. and we feel that could be done without significantly diminishing the progression set up by the downtown plan from a 0 setback in the downtown core to a 0 to 10 foot setback in downtown neighborhood, 5 to 15 in downtown transition, and the 20 or more 20-foot minimum setback in the GDC, the SR 522 corridor, Sunrise Valley View, and the adjacent single-family zones. So that concludes my presentation tonight. This point, open it up for questions of staff, of Planning Commission, and/or the applicant. And then, as we put in the agenda bill, there's 3 potential avenues of action. You could direct staff to prepare council findings and an ordinance for consideration at a future meeting. Could schedule a council public hearing, or you could ask us to schedule an additional study session. And with any of these options, we would appreciate any direction on any additional information or analysis that you desire on this. So, with that.
Great, thank you, Dave. I see Steve Booth standing up. Are you just preparing for questions, or are you wanting to
I was just going
chip
to
in
have
for
comments representing the Planning Commission if the council would like that.
Great. Steve Booth, Planning Commission. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Steve Booth. I'm a Bothell resident, and I currently serve on our Planning Commission. So just to add a few comments to what Dave said with regards to this entire process. First of all, we're very concerned that it be an open and fair process, that there be ample time for the public to comment, and I can assure you that that was met through what we performed. Back to the issue of the parking, the decision that as we spent time on this to go from a measurement of units to bedrooms was a fairly easy one. We felt that was a very obvious and correct metric to use. The question then came down to what was the right number. And so we really did look at surrounding cities and both relative to Bothell and Bothell size, and we felt 0.75 was correct, but we're certainly open to debate on that. But I just wanted you to know that there was some considerable thought that went into that. And then finally on the setback issue, we really debated about both everything from a 0 to a 20-foot setback, and I really would support what Dave said in terms of 5 foot seemed like the right number in terms of transitioning from where you have none to something of greater than that for this particular parcel. So those would be my comments, and I'll be here with Dave to help answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments tonight. So, Councilmember Lamb.
Thanks. I just had a couple of questions and comments for Dave and perhaps Steve. So can you walk us through then just kind of on a practical level of where moving, because I know that there is a specific proposal that sort of initiated this, and then council asked the Planning Commission to take a look at it. This is going to be reducing the parking requirement. The proposal that the Planning Commission has is not to go down to 0 in terms of setback, but to go to 5 feet. But it would allow the expansion of the or the reduction of the parking requirement from 2.2 to 7.5 and associate it to bedrooms as opposed to the total apartment unit.
Yes, and technically it's not a reduction. It's a different way of calculating. So a developer who did all 3-bedroom units under this plan would actually wind up doing 2.25 spaces per unit. But what we are seeing being developed in the downtown is predominantly the 1-bedroom studios and a mix of 2 bedrooms.
And what I know that we had the numbers for the 104 of what they're currently seeing and what they're utilizing or what they built to that. What is the Six Oaks project? Is that similarly built or no?
Again, same developer, and on the Six Oaks, they had a few more challenges in terms of just having enough room to meet their parking count. So they're not exceeding the minimum on that project. They're very close to minimum, and but they feel that their analysis of the demographics and the actual demand for the parking is in line with what they're providing there. It's also a little bit complicated there because they have a mix of some commercial uses as well as residential. So they're able to take advantage of some other shared parking reductions, and there, since they're building portions of paying for portions of the new streets adjacent to that, they're able to count that on-street parking towards their commercial parking requirement.
And is it correct that in the packet, I believe that I read that there was that the University of Washington represented that 50% of their students don't have a car? Is that right? Or
of the students in their in Husky Village housing complex, they're finding that around 50% or just under 50% actually are bringing cars to campus.
And how is that? I was curious when I read that. How is that quantified? Is that by who has a? Do they do permit parking at Husky Village?
Essentially, yes. They require all their tenants to state whether they have a car, and I'm not sure all of the details if they assign them specific spaces, but they actually have more parking on that site than they need or than they would be required to have, and even more than they actually need based on that number. So they're using some of the parking on the Husky Village site to serve general campus parking.
And this is a question for both you and for Steve from the Planning Commission, is that there has been, it was certainly in the Sunrise Valley View neighborhood, a perception that there's a parking problem, and there has been a real challenge of people using that neighborhood as a parking, and we're addressing that in a different way. But what is the sense of staff if it, we're going to be adding quite a few new residents to the downtown area under things that are currently under construction? It sounds like from the 104 that it's parked appropriately. What is the sense of why those challenges are emerging, or do we have a consensus on that? Or if it's not new development, is it people from businesses or people from the campus, or is there some?
I think I also sit on the city campus or campus traffic committee, the CTC, and so I've been involved in a lot of those discussions. I think the feeling is that most of the spillover parking that Sunrise Valley View is experiencing is from the campus, and a portion of that is probably also park and ride, at least the portions of Sunrise Valley View that are closer to the park and ride, but not at this point and in time anyway from adjacent multifamily development. The 104, the building is done. It's not fully leased, so we really don't. We can't say right now that it's performing adequately. Although I recently did have a discussion with the developer about that, and they even thought that they might still have some surplus that would be available for leasing out to adjacent developments that weren't able to fit the parking on their sites. So I think that still remains to be seen, but at least they're thinking that might be the case.
All right. Steve?
The only thing I would add is that, yes, you're right. There is considerable frustration in that the Sunrise neighborhood. We did hear that during the Planning Commission meetings, that there's considerable frustration around parking, whether it's generated by the University of Washington or by additional downtown traffic. We certainly understand their concerns, and we would think that at some future time they should be addressed a number of ways, whether it's partnering more effectively with the university, perhaps some additional ordinances about parking in front of residents' driveways, permit parking. But on this particular initiative, we remain focused just on this project and just on exactly what the right metrics were for the right parking ratio, and we felt we made the correct decision.
Okay.
And I would also add that the findings did, and the recommendation did include a recommendation that council approve the permit parking, which subsequently did happen. It still is waiting to be implemented, as I understand. But so that was part of the commission's recommendation.
Okay.
Hey, will you do me a quick favor and just go back to your last slide? Sorry.
The previous one?
No, the last slide that you put up. Great, thanks. Were you finished? I'm sorry.
I just had one. I had one further comment. So I appreciate the work the Planning Commission did. I'm supportive of the Planning Commission recommendation generally in this case. I think it's appropriate. I don't. I think we are moving into a different time in parking, and I think that there are aesthetic concerns, and there are just sort of environmental concerns about over parking everything that we build. There's practical concerns in terms of neighborhoods that we don't want to have people spilling over, but I'm not convinced that that's a result of residential development. I think that has to do with people who are commuting into the area. I think people who are using my experiences, and people who are using the businesses, people who are using the park and ride, people who are attending the campus, or customers of adjacent businesses. It's not people who are on a systematic basis not parking at the residence that they live in. So I support the Planning Commission recommendation, and I thank you guys for your good work.
Yeah, we very much agree with that this particular project was correctly parked for what's needed, both for the unit as well as for the city's needs.
Further council questions or comments? And please consider there's 3 options up here tonight that I think by the time we're done with our conversation tonight, we need to take one of those directions, which one is preparing the council findings in an ordinance or scheduling a public hearing to allow the public to address council on this issue. And then the third, of course, would be just another study session before we have a public hearing or council findings.
Just to weigh in on that, I would support scheduling a public hearing so the public has an opportunity to weigh in on this.
Great, thank you.
Could I just add one technical clarification?
Well, we're not having public comment this evening.
Okay, thank you.
So,
I understand.
Yeah. Mr. Marvin is the applicant on this, so I did invite him to come and attend in case you did want to had any questions of him.
okay. Maybe a council member tonight may have a question that can raise something up, but at this point we don't have it's a study session. At other points we may have a public hearing where we have the opportunity to hear.
Understood.
Great. Council, further questions or comments? Councilmember Rayum?
So I had a few questions about this. So just because you brought it up as an example, the 104 apartment has a setback of 5 feet from the right-of-way. Is that correct? That was an example you showed of another zoning that has that provision.
Yeah, it actually has the required setback is it can a minimum of 0, a maximum of 10. So I think what they built is close to 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed I travel that road usually about 4 times a day, maybe more. People coming out of that's the post office that has the potential reductions written on it, right? That's the roof.
Right.
Coming out of that north parking lot, people have to go so far out of that driveway to see if somebody's coming. They're in the lane of travel. So I'm curious, have we had any traffic engineering kind of look at the consequences of moving a building from 5 feet from the right of way?
Well, the development was certainly reviewed by our transportation engineer, but I don't think there's been any post-construction review of that particular situation. If and when the post office redevelops, that'll be part of the review of that, is wherever their driveways are and sight lines from those driveways.
Because I don't have a lot of examples of a building 5 foot from the right of way, but that one doesn't. I mean, it was almost every time somebody's coming out of that driveway, it gets pretty dangerous. People have to swerve around them, and then they're in the oncoming lane of travel, and it's a narrow roads. I don't know if that's the case in all the GDC zones, or no, I'm sorry, that's not even the GDC zone, but DN zone. So it'd be nice. I would agree with Council Member Lamb. It's going to be hard to get used to have this come back in a public hearing, but I'd like to know a little more about where we have buildings 5 feet from the road and how things are going for traffic incidences and that type of thing. So on from there, so it would be interesting to find out a little more about the other surrounding cities. It's always nice to check the neighboring cities to see what they're doing on a per bedroom basis for parking. Is that readily available tonight, or is that something that we'd have to have come back?
I don't have that. Well, I do have the King County right-size parking study that I could put up that I distributed to the council yesterday, and so it lists parking requirements in a fairly rough way for other jurisdictions in King County. Would you like me to put that up?
Your presentation, okay.
Just bear with me for a second. Also, while I'm doing that, Commissioner Booth did point out. I'm not that familiar with the parking or the exiting situation from the post office relative to that new development, but he mentioned to me that he thought that the real concern, the real issue there is that we've introduced on-street parking along that frontage, and that's more than the building is producing some sightline issues for what that's worth. So here's the table of multifamily off-street parking requirements in King County jurisdictions. So you can see that there's a range of from 2.2 Bothell at the high end of the range, and 0 in some situations. Some communities have opted to let the market determine the actual parking provided.
Can you go to the top just quickly so we can
Sorry.
see the listings? Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe. Perfect.
There we go. Can you still read that?
Well, this will come back. That'd be great to get in our next packet, just so we can mull it over a little bit.
The report that I provided, or just this table?
I'd like this, probably both. Yeah, I'd
Okay,
like
the
this
full
table
report,
for
yeah.
sure. And then there's the 0.75 per unit. Now in the packet, it looked like it was chosen because it's a transit oriented area. Is that why we selected the 0.75 per unit? Or I mean per bedroom, sorry.
The analysis was that all of the downtown's districts, and particularly those central downtown districts, have enough transit routes to qualify for the maximum transit-related reductions if we were still operating under the citywide. Those apply to commercial uses. So we basically pre-applied those reductions to and reduced the commercial parking counts. When it came to the residential, the feeling was that we were overparked, and our consultant came up with the recommendation of the 0.75 per bedroom. One, to get the overall parking requirement more in line with sort of the best practices at that time. This is before we had this King County right-size parking study, and also to make sure that we were calibrating our parking to the size of the units.
Okay. And then I just have one last comment that I'm concerned about parking just from a transportation standpoint. So I've been on ETP for a little while, and they're planning out some 30 years of where light rail is going to go, where routes are going to get cut. Well, at least we get presentations on it. We don't really have a whole lot of say in the 2 years I've been there about what's occurring. But I even piped up in that meeting just to voice a concern that I've noticed is that Bothell is kind of the stepchild to both the Snohomish County system and the King County system. And we don't have a whole lot of service. We have one good route, in my opinion, from Sound Transit that takes to and from Seattle. Well, it goes out to Woodinville, but comes through Bothell. And so I'm a little leery because, we're talking 20, 30 years down the road that there's already been plans for, and people have already politically positioned and got their cities the funds. And I just have a lot of concern about having the mindset that this is going to be a transportation-oriented community in the next 20 years, because I just don't see it coming from my perspective, and so I'm worried about that, especially with parking, because as it is, I mean, we need people to come into the city to spend money to help raise sales taxes, and if they don't have a place to park, I doubt they're going to make this much of a destination. So that on top of just the quality of life and having as far as I can tell, we're all going to need vehicles for a bit longer in this area. So that'd be my 10 cents, if it's worth that. And I'll yield.
Great, thanks. Councilmember Evans or Deputy Mayor Spivey?
Well, I agree with Councilmember Reum that Sound Transit better serves Bothell as far as going into Seattle, and it also better serves Bothell going into Bellevue, as well as into Linwood. Our county and community transit systems have failed us miserably when it comes to that. Just one question I really had was there. You make mention of the 5-foot setback that could increase the rear buffer. I would prefer that it does increase the rear buffer.
I believe the language we've included you would only reduce the front setback if you would in turn increase the setback from the single family areas.
Okay.
There are only a few parcels that have front yard setbacks on two sides where you would actually and don't really have a rear yard setback. They have front yard setbacks and side yard setbacks where you this could potentially increase the building footprint, but again, it is a provisional measure, so they'd have to make their case and be approved by the director.
Okay, and then it's more of a Scrivener's error, but because I saw it twice is the only reason I'm going to bring it up. On page 5 of your conclusions and recommendations, which is page 63 of 72 of our packet, Mr. Marvin's parcel is listed at the southeast corner of Northeast 185th and 108th Avenue Northwest. We don't have any northwest in the city of Bothell as far as streets go.
I'm afraid that's my Ballard tendencies coming out there. So yes, that is a typo.
It wouldn't have been a big deal, but I saw it twice, so I thought I better say something so it got corrected.
My fingers automatically go from the N to the W.
All right, that's all I have for now.
Do you have a recommendation on an opinion whether to go with?
I'm all for the public hearing.
Public hearing, okay.
I'm all for the public hearing.
Councilmember Sandberg, did you have an opinion one way or the other? Do you have any comments?
I have one question for staff, and then I have some comments. I don't know. Does Councilmember Evans want to go? Okay.
I wasn't clear for the in the general downtown corridor requirements. I know that it provides for a 25-foot landscape buffer in the rear yard setback adjacent to single family, but does it require a 25-foot landscape buffer adjacent to single family if, for example, it was a side yard, or does it only provided for in the rear yard?
That's part of the special setback requirement that would apply to any frontage along existing single family areas.
And is that only in the North Creek portion? Is that special language related to the North Creek portion, or does that apply up in the 527 corridor area as well?
I believe that's throughout the district, but I can, and I don't have the subsequent more detailed regulations in the packet, so I'll include those in the next package and come get back to you on that.
The reason why I ask is if we are considering allowing parking in side yards, not just in the rear yards, I want to make sure that if there is any adjacency to single family, that we understand that we could be putting parking adjacent to single family zoned if it was allowed in the side yard. I know it doesn't apply to Mr. Marvin's parcel. I'm just thinking about, in a global perspective, anywhere else in the general development corridor, either along Beardsley or up along 527.
Yeah, and I'd have to look also at whether there would be any situations where you'd have a side yard setback adjacent to existing single-family zoning, but I'll come back with an analysis of that. Okay. And in any case, it would have the if it isn't, we can that might be instead of just requiring the 10-foot Type 3 landscape buffer from the street, that could be extended to side yards along single family if there are any. So,
right. I mean, I can't think of any, but you never know, until because it's hard when you're just thinking about making changes in the context of one example, what kind of impact there might be elsewhere in that zoning district. And then, so I have some comments. And I'm not going to start with the parking, although I have comments about that, because the thing that caught my eye was the decrease of the front setback from 20 to 5 feet. And let me just take a moment to get to the staff report where they talk about that. So on page 57 of our agenda packet, it talks about the rationale for decreasing the front setback. And in the second paragraph, staff talks about what was originally envisioned when all of the districts were created in the downtown master plan. And so the downtown plan envisioned a transition from the zero setback development requirement in the downtown core, and then as you left the downtown core, those setbacks became progressively wider. And a lot of the benefit, in my mind, to those front yard setbacks is relief from the built environment. We expect to have that real dense zero setback in our core where you have the sidewalk right up to the front doors of the buildings. But as you move out from the core, and what was envisioned in the original downtown master planning process was to have that transition in density and in feel, not density, intensity and feel. And I think when we start to change that, we lose a lot of what was envisioned in that transition. And so I feel that decreasing that front yard setback from 20 to 5 feet really decreases the relief from the built environment that additional space grants us in landscaping, for example. And so if you look at what's currently on Beardsley Boulevard, which is the general downtown corridor, if you look on the north side, we have the new dentist office building that has campus offices and classrooms in it, and it has a larger setback, and I'm sure it's
it's at least 20 feet. And then when you head more into town, there's Beardsley Cove Apartments that also has that setback of at least 20 feet. And that really provides the visual relief from the intense development. And I think we would create a visual situation, and we would negate that careful planning of transitioning of intensity in the original downtown master plan by reducing this front setback from 20 to 5 feet. I understand the argument that you can move it farther away from single-family zones. I'm not convinced that benefit, that distance of 15 feet, is enough to offset the loss of, I don't want to keep saying relief of the built environment, but that landscaping in the front, the vision and the feel that we want to create. And that building, that 15 feet isn't gained in buffer, because that buffer to the single family zone is still going to be 25 feet. It would be gained in a setback. And I'm sure we can hear in the public hearing when it comes up, whether neighbors agree or disagree with that, whether, having that building 15 farther feet away from them is enough of an offsetting benefit to the change of the streetscape on the front end. So I would like council to think about that. And I know, there's lots of examples. When you look immediately to the west of the Marvin property, we have that older apartment building that is almost up to the street. But do you want that to be the guide of how things would look and from a consistency standpoint, or do you want to look at Beardsley Cove Apartments and the dental building, or even immediately east of the proposed Marvin property, which is the old rehab center? So I have a real discomfort in reducing that front yard setback. And then, then the other comments I have are about the parking. And I think it is a good change that Planning Commission is recommending that we change a calculation approach from a per unit basis to a per bedroom basis. And one of the reasons I think that's a good idea is because Bellevue, around Bellevue College, has had significant problems. There have been articles in the newspaper about their apartment complexes, and even though, or they're building out of apartments, and even though this code isn't about apartments, I would hate to have a parking calculation that indirectly supported apartment development. And I think, as a side note, we should be considering apartment code regulation or something to that effect in the future, because we're a college town just like Bellevue is, and they're already behind the 8 ball, and we don't have that situation yet, and it would be good for us to be proactive on that versus reactive. So I like the change from the parking calculation, but then the question, which is what Commissioner Booth brought up, is, well, what is that right number? And we don't have experience yet in our city about whether 0.75 is the right number, because we have projects that are nearing build out or in the pipeline, but not at a complete enough state to give us experience. So what we do then is we look to other jurisdictions, and we have this right size study that Mr. Boyd provided for us. And so I looked at that right size study and need to look at it some more, but the thing that stood out to me is,
on that right side study. And Dave, can you put that table 2 back up, because you had that
Sure.
up? And if I could make my mouse behave,
This
I'll
one?
get to it too. Yeah. There. So, in that study, what I understood, what I gained from that is that our current parking requirements provide for more parking than is actually needed, and current parking requirements being the 2.2 per unit. And there is a danger for overbuilding parking. I mean, you can have too much parking. It impacts affordability. You don't want to have all that impervious area if you don't need it. And so I think it is important to figure out what that magic number is. And so when you look at table 2, I was kind of struck that I was looking for other 0.75s on this table. And the other 0.75s that I see on this table are in Bellevue, and I don't know what any of those districts are. And then Central Issaquah. But everybody else has parking requirements that are higher than 0.75. And so that kind of...
Caroline's another that's 0.75.
Okay. And so that kind of concerned me, because although I would say that downtown Bothell is the best served by transit in the whole city, which is not to say that it's great service. So if I look at Bellevue, for example, and I think on the east side, Bellevue is one of the best transit-served cities in our area. They have a parking ratio of 0.75, and I don't see how we could ever match the transit service of Bellevue and yet still have the same parking ratio. So, and then the study does say that Bellevue is underparked in some cases. And so let me see where I can find that. On page 7 of 18, it says parts of Bellevue have minimum parking requirements, and sometimes it's hard to understand, that are below forecast utilization values. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I have to think about that. So I guess I'm concerned about 0.75. And I don't know what the right number is, but I'm worried that 0.75 might be a little too low. There's also a table 3 where they say they have observed average utilization, and table 3 is on page 10. And it's spaces per dwelling unit, and they're all mostly above 1. And in our examples, we're talking about dwelling units being studio or one-bedroom apartments. So I think I would like maybe to have some more discussion about this right size study, and because I'm looking at the study and I'm not convinced that 0.75 is the right ratio. And then just as a side note, it does say that only 7 cities within the study area have parking maxima for multifamily residential developments, and they suggest that you should not have a maximum because that also decreases flexibility for developers, just as having a parking minimum.
Are you finished, or are you looking for a further comment?
Well, let me just look and see. So just hold on one moment.
going to hold you to that.
Well, technology and saving
I'm
paper is great. You just have
kidding.
to
I have paper scattered across
you
my
have to
desk.
get around everything.
That's it for now.
Okay, great. Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. I think the council has addressed many of the questions that I had too in the discussion, and so I just confirm what my thoughts are on this. That I do agree with the going to the per bedroom calculation rather than a per unit. I think that's hopefully will provide a better product and address the issue. I agree that I'm looking forward to the public hearing to see what we hear. I did get, I did read the correspondence that the Planning Commission received, and but I'd like to hear, from the developer in that public hearing. I guess one statement I saw throughout here was that lenders sometimes require additional parking than the minimum, and I that may be the case. I don't know that. I guess if I was developing a facility, I would develop it. The goal would be to develop a nice facility, but put in the minimum amount of money that I would have to. So I don't know how often they really do put in more money. Maybe that's the banks require that or not. But I guess that's a question I would have. The question that Councilmember Lamb about the student parking, 50% or less students are parking a car, and then the comment was made that apparently the parking over there at the college parking, the apartments there, that some of that is used for college parking also on campus. So all I know is I drove by there tonight and it looked jammed to me in there. I could not see one stall anywhere. So it doesn't look like to me that half the students in there are only driving cars, but maybe that's the case because you got people from campus parking in there. But that you just look at the existing conditions and it doesn't seem to bear that out. But maybe somebody can clarify that later on. The issue of increasing the setback or the area behind the development, as shown in the example up here, and the impacts to the residential, I don't know if it's possible to get sight lines of that, of how that really affects the neighborhood to the what would that be, the east or to the south, I guess. What
referring to this one
in the drawing? Well, I think you showed one even further back that showed that it looked like 3 stories. Yeah, it looked like 3 stories up there in the back versus 4 in the front. But how does that really, and with the setback or whatever, how does that still look from the residential area? I guess I don't know if there's any way of showing what that potential sight line would be, but I would be interested in seeing that. I know that there's no grading plans. I'm assuming there's no grading plans or any of that provided for this site yet, but it would be interesting to know what the elevations are and how realistic is that you could show that is possible. I don't know what the status of their plans are, but and look at that area back behind the residentials or between the residential and the development. I think what I kind of get hung up on is the existing condition versus the plan condition. The example that Councilmember Ream mentioned about the coming out of the post office, I've had that exact same problem of exiting from the post office, the north exit there from the post office, and cars coming around that corner a little bit from 104, and you have to get out in the middle of the road before you can really see around that. Now, the statement was made by staff that maybe that is because of the parking on the street. Well, if it is, then, we need to eliminate the parking on the street, because to me there is for me personally, there's a problem in getting out of that entrance of the parking, the north parking area. So, and I don't know what credit these people, I heard that they do get some credit for on-street parking or get to utilize some of that. But
not in this case.
Okay. But if it does create this condition, then obviously they shouldn't get that requirement, I wouldn't think. So those are just in addition to the other thoughts that have been shared. I understand the concept that we don't want to overpark, but I haven't seen very many areas in the city that were overparked yet. The business park would be one, I think, because there's a lot of vacant buildings there and things. But you mentioned Six Oaks project down there, and the fact that they would rely on some on-street parking. That they have a tight site. I just feel like in some cases we don't have enough parking. But I also understand the flip side of that, in that we don't want to overpark, and the environmental side of that and that type of thing. So I'll be interested in seeing this item come back to the council and then a public hearing, and hopefully we can get some additional input in some of these answers to some of these questions and things.
Good. I'm also in favor of a public hearing, so that's looks like 6 council members interested in hearing from the public to bring this back at a future date. My concerns echoed several of yours. I do agree going to a per bedroom analysis for parking is good. I don't agree that the 0.75 is an accurate number that we should be using. My concern, especially around the college, is there's not adequate parking. I would like to understand the parking that is provided at the university right now, because when I've been there, it's always problematic. There's not only the students that apparently just have 50% that people like to reference, but there's also staff that goes there. There's community meetings that occur there. I've been to several meetings where there's 150 people in a room that overlooks the wetland area. Where do those 150 cars park? So I don't think that reducing parking requirements around the campus, from my immediate perspective, is a good idea. And certainly I appreciate Councilmember Sandberg's perspective of we spent a good amount of time around this table with very familiar faces planning what the whole downtown plan would look like. And we want to create a nucleus of pedestrian activity downtown. And from there, then understand the relation to dense development to neighborhoods. And I think how we went about planning that past downtown plan and the current downtown plan, as we see on the face of our agenda packet, attachment 1, is a good one. And I don't know that we need to go make changes just to accommodate individual requests. Of the Gateway project, which is one that would be affected here, is already under development. The next area that would be affected by this would be QFC and the Rite Aid. And I don't know that, as I consider reducing parking there, that's really appropriate, and pulling buildings closer to the street is appropriate. I think it's a transition zone that allows you to go into the neighborhoods that have 20-foot setbacks and a better relation to the dense development. So that's kind of my perspective. If it would go with this council to go toward a reduced setback from 20 feet, you'll probably hear from me that I'm going to want to have some certain design requirements, because we do have that in the Boulevard area and the Main Street area. As buildings are built right on the sidewalk, you have to have some modulations in the buildings. You have to have some awnings and such, and good design. And I don't know, as I'm sitting right here, what design would be along with this council or planning commission recommendation, but I would like to understand it better. I trust our community development director with his discretion, but I think some certain requirements are important for applicants to understand as well what they would be facing. So I look forward to hearing from the public. I'm sure they're all going to have some opinions and thoughts and contributions to the matter. So I think we have some direction to come back with a public hearing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So we are not breaking at 8:03. We have one item before we go into an executive session, and that is the special meeting which we were having on Saturday, February 1st at Russell's at 3305 Monte Villa Parkway. So, Bob Stowe, our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I presented a draft agenda, or developed a draft agenda for you based on the interest that has been expressed over the last year by the City Council. And if there's a theme for this year's retreat, it would be One of developing a plan for finishing a job that we started nearly 10 years ago in terms of focusing on the downtown and completing some of the necessary public infrastructure investments. And so a substantial amount of time has been devoted towards that topic for this year's retreat. There's other opportunities for what we're just simply calling open discussion, in which council can discuss any number of topics. And so I'm interested in your feedback so that staff can start working on the retreat packet, which we want to get to you in advance, but we are under a short time frame given we selected the date of February 1.
Great. So I know everybody just got this first here tonight. Can we just spend 5 minutes, and before we go, if everybody want to look down the agenda, see if there's anything you like to change or add or otherwise? Councilmember Rayam?
I don't have a copy of the agenda. Can I get one?
Oh, sorry.
That's right. There you go. Didn't pass it.
So we'll let you go last.
One I got.
Anybody else have anything? Councilmember
I have a question.
Stewart?
Are these is this retreat open to the public?
They are. They're open, advertised meetings.
Okay.
Do you have any comments on the agenda at all? No. Okay. So Sandberg is fine. Anybody else? Councilmember Evans.
I guess I'd like to see potentially funding opportunities in plan. The 4 maybe expanded some. What other types of things we may want to consider in there.
Funding up for what?
My intention, Councilmember, sorry for the interruption, the last bullet was intended to cover any number of items, whether it be capital, level of service.
Okay.
You pick the area.
Okay.
Was really just more of an open invitation for to have a discussion about our level of service.
So at this point, it would just be a discussion then, but if you want tonight to collectively have a topic of discussion that anything would need to be prepared for, we probably should bring it up this evening. Right? Unless you just want to bring some ideas to the table that day.
Well, I just, if I'm reading this right, it says the Boulevard, the Park at Bothell Landing, and Main Street. We're going to discuss funding opportunities for those 3 items. And the pavement preservation.
Right. It was intended to follow much along the same lines of the top goals that were selected this year, and again discussed last year. But revisiting that plan, how we're going to implement.
And so the 3rd bullet would be a catch-all of anything else that may come up.
It was
as part of
intended for that, yes.
So you will have a presentation on the first 2 items, what those costs would be and what funding opportunities may be. Is that
the first 2 items will have some specific information. Of course, the last, I think, will be a conversation amongst council and staff.
Right.
We won't have necessarily pre-prepared.
So if staff thinks, or if council thinks of any specific items under that 3rd bullet, then like the mayor said, we need to let you know ahead of time. So if there is some preparation for those things,
yes,
we can do that.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Councilmember Rayam.
Are we going to get a new pavement preservation report? Because the last one, a lot of us reeled from the last one, and then we kind of were informed that one was potentially not accurate or not as accurate as.
Yes, we're going to spend some time on trying to arrive at what we believe the appropriate amount is to invest in our pavement long term.
Okay. So it would be like that road. Do we do that every year? The road preservation study?
It wasn't one of our studies. It was a study that was performed by another agency, I believe. So, but we'll provide the latest data that we have.
Okay. Then I think it maybe is caught in the catch-all, but last year we had a standalone thing about park maintenance and just right-of-way maintenance and keeping up is that just kind of lumped into the other capital or level of service changes desired by council category this year?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
Change the language around a little bit, right?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it looks good.
Okay.
Anyone else? Comments on the agenda? Councilmember Lamb?
I'd like to see, we've had some discussion about individuals in the Snohomish County portion of Bothell who had wanted to have a petition to come into the city. A number of those folks have reached out to us a couple of different times, and I don't know that we've ever taken a sort of a coherent position on that. I know that we had the 2 elections, but there are certain areas that voted for annexation twice where people have contacted me and others a number of times to express a desire to annex into the city. And so I'd like to at least kind of have a conversation about what that looks like, because I think that's something that might require some lead time to you. And so I wanted to raise that tonight so that you'd have the opportunity to give us some guidance on that.
Okay.
Certainly agreeable to add that on there. I see Sandberg, Rayum, Evans. Okay. For me, under the 845 Development Revitalization Status Update, we have public improvements and facilities, private development. I'd like to throw under there our development services to make sure that as the new development's coming, that they're ready, that both directors have the opportunity to say that the staff that they have, they're well served and ready to take in permits and whatever may be coming, because there's going to be a few reviews that need to occur. So it'd be nice to hear from both of them. And I know that we do have a budget that we need to adhere to, but maybe there's something that we need to consider.
Well, we are working on, and the departments have a work plan that they're implementing, and so it'd be a good opportunity to discuss that with council during the retreat.
Perfect. And the next was, we're just kind of loading a lot of dream ideas here, but Canyon Park and Business Park planning to see where there might be other areas. So we talked about this, the deputy mayor and myself, and also I had the opportunity to meet with the city manager today. But about 7 years ago, we as a council, I think, or maybe even 8 years ago, started the plan for the downtown revitalization. We feel here we are 8-9 years later, where we're actually seeing it come to life, and so maybe another 2 years it goes into place. So we see these cycles of redevelopment are 8 to 10 years in the process. So if we think that by then the downtown is completed, we might want to consider what the business park needs may be, as we're looking just across the freeway here. Concrete tilt-ups, I heard 8 years ago that they would like to see something new, the owners over there. And also in Canyon Park, I've also heard that there may be some ideas to revitalize that neck of the woods. So, because obviously the downtown is in King County, Canyon Park would be Snohomish County. It's kind of some interesting thoughts regarding to good planning in both of those areas.
Okay.
Councilmember Sandberg.
I would like to see some kind of discussion on where we are on emergency preparedness, and I think it is an ongoing challenge for communities to get their citizens prepared, and I think we should pick a year of renewed interest in getting people to think about that. And I went to the Puget Sound Regional Council newly elected officials workshop today, and we were all in roundtable sessions talking to each other about what were some of the issues that were important to us regionally. And the main ones always come up: transportation, economic development. But emergency preparedness came up, and someone made the comment of, we need to increase our education and materials that are available to the public. And in my personal experience, we have a ton of materials. I know where they all are. I just have huge personal inertia in being prepared. But as cities, we need to continually communicate to people that individuals and families have to be prepared, that the cities or other government organizations might not be there for you. And so whatever we can do as a city to encourage people to get ready, maybe, we can have that conversation.
Interesting. Great. Oh, boy.
Just that's all right to double dip. But it's on here, but I would just like a briefing about the City Hall design work we executed a month ago, I guess about 2 months into it. So just a kind of, it's already in the bullet there, public investment in facilities, but just a kind of an update on how that's going would be good.
It'll be a small bit during the retreat, but during the February 11th meeting is when we're scheduled to have a check-in with council on that topic.
Okay, excellent.
Great. Thank you all. Nothing else, City Manager, besides our
No,
executive
I
session?
think we'll have a full day on the 1st.
Oh,
we do have an exec session for 30 minutes.
We did community reports at the beginning. Is it something that could wait till our next council meeting? It is? Okay. So let's take 7 minutes and let's meet in an executive session at 8:20. The City Council is going to be in executive session for approximately 30 minutes. No action is required, and it's in regards to property, oh my goodness.
Property acquisition and potential litigation.
Potential litigation. Thank
Pending
you.
litigation,
We,
sorry.
we don't expect to reapproach the dais here after. Oh, we may? Oh, we may. Okay. So, see you at 8:50, potentially.